Hello, my spicy pumpkins. I read 30 books last month, so we need to talk about them. If you couldn't gather by the intro and the title, this is gonna be my September wrap-up. Yeah, if you're like, Liv, 30 books, are you crazy? Maybe I am. In the beginning of September, Jan from Jan Agaton, obviously, popped into her Patreon Discord and was like, who wants to attempt 30 books in 30 days with me? Me, at home, with a crazy fever and COVID, and who's never read like more than 17 or 19 books in a month, was like, I can do it. And that's how we kind of got ourselves in this situation. At first I was like, I'm probably gonna fail and I'm fine with that. And then I was watching everybody else doing this challenge who was succeeding incredibly, and I was like, I have to win. I will say, I feel like I talk about this whenever I do a Jan-like challenge. I'm not a god, okay? I'm not Jan, I'm not some of my friends in this Discord. I had to read 15 short stories to be able to do this. So I have 15 novels and 15 short stories to talk about in this video. I will say, with 13 minutes left in September, I did finish my 30th story. And we'll just say, if Goodreads counts it, I count it, babe, okay? That being said, we're gonna have a lot to talk about in this video, and my camera loves to overheat as quickly as possible. So without any further ado, let's hop in to the monthly stats. Don't look at my notes, those are the ratings. So I read 30 books, and this is where I'm gonna differentiate from my Discord pals, right? The other people who completed this challenge. It was only 4,882 pages, and goddamn did I struggle to get every single one of those. Of everything I read, I had 26 horror books, 2 sci-fi books, 1 lit fic, and 1 I put magical realism / fantasy. And then, like I said, I had 15 novels and 15 short stories. My average rating for the month was a 3.7. I had 3 2-stars, 2 2.5 stars. I'm looking down, but obviously I need to... 6 3-stars. Did I say that one already? 3 3.5 stars, 8 4 stars, 3 4.5 stars, and 5 5 stars. For the short stories, I utilized Kindle Unlimited because I was gonna delete it, but I had so much fun with I was gonna cancel my subscription, but now I'm like, should I? I've already canceled all my other Amazon subscriptions. Do I leave this? Because there is a lot of independent authors I can get on there, but also those books are so cheap, but also I am so poor. I don't know. Let me know what you do if you also hate billionaires and you don't need Jeff Bezos in your bank account. Did you keep your Kindle Unlimited? I'm not going to talk too in depth about all of these stories. I think I have like one I want to rant about, and everything else I might just say a couple words. But when we go through all of the books by rating, I'll just name those short stories that landed under that rating. But I read all of the Shivers collection. I read all but 1 of the Creature Feature collection. And I read, I think 3 or 4, 4 from the Trespass collection. And then I read 1 sci-fi one from a collection that I don't know the name of. And I'll pop it up on the screen right here, because if I start Googling, we're gonna waste time and the battery is gonna overheat. I read 16 new to me authors, which is incredible, great, and obviously 14 that I read before. And of everything I read, 10 of them were on my backlist TBR I owned prior to this year. 4 I have bought over the course of this year, and 16 were on my Kindle. 1 of the novels was on my Kindle. Let's hop into the books. Like I said, I'm gonna go by rating. So we're gonna go lowest to highest rated. So first, starting with my 3 2-stars. The 1 short story that landed under this was Jackknife from the Shivers collection, I believe, by Joe Hill. And this is the one I want to rant about, because what in the freaking dude horror? I listened to this. I had a day where I had 4 hours of driving, and I was like, I'm behind, so I'm gonna listen to as many of these Amazon originals as I can. I took a note. The path lassoed a pond with reedy, marshy edges. A pool of water roughly the shape of a horse's cock. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I just supposed to know off the top of my head what the shape of a Also, I was like, there was just so much more like that. And then on top of this, and I will say, this is not Joe Hill's fault. I'm pretty sure it was written intentionally like this. You're supposed to hate this main character. It is a man who lost his job and is losing his marriage because as a professor was pretty much like grooming this 21-year-old girl, and is just like bitching and moaning the entire story about how he never gets anything he wants and life never works out for him and life is so hard as a dude who takes advantage of people. So that was 2 stars and I hated it. And now I'm like, I want to read Nosferatu, but like how heavy is the dude horror? My dudes, let me know. I don't think I could do a full story like that, but I also know a lot of people love it, so I'm assuming maybe it's not fully like that, but I just, brother, what? And then like probably maybe just because I hated him so much, not nearly enough bad stuff happened to that man for the amount of BS he put me through in this story. But for the 2 books I read, first one I read was for a vlog that's not out yet because I am so behind on vlogs, is Sleep Tight by J.H. Markert. This is following a woman whose father like caught this famous notorious serial killer as a detective, and her whole life she's wanted to be a detective like him. Fast forward into the future, she is now a detective and that serial killer is being put to death, and the night that that happens, her father is murdered, and it's kind of her trying to figure out who murdered her father. And then let me see if it's in here. Yeah, the person who is claiming to have done this has also now kidnapped Tess's daughter, and it is a race to find her daughter and a race to figure out who is kind of replicating the crimes of this serial killer who's just been put to death. I will say I had a lot of fun reading this. I have like an entire note on my phone filled with my theories. That being said, I figured out the entire book really quite early. Not the entire book, because there are some later twists that like don't even start to get introduced until after you're like over 100 pages in. That being said, I ranted about it in my vlog, so I won't go that hard, but this author chooses a mental disorder that affects like I think like 1.5 of the entire world's population, and there are now 2 people in this town with this mental disorder, and it's also the reason why these 2 are violent, and that was where I was out. I would much rather you just make someone violent for violence sake, or honestly still use criminal psychology for the shit that happened to them in their childhood that made them the way that they are, without them. It just felt like lazy writing and I hated it. So this ended up being a 2 star, even though I did like fly through it and had a little bit of fun while reading it. That just kind of ruined it for me. And the next one was a 5-star prediction, so that's brutal. But my other 2-star of the month was The Echoes by Evie Wilde. The concept of this book is a 5-star concept. It is about a man who suddenly finds himself as a ghost and is stuck in his apartment and is watching his girlfriend grieve and figuring out that she had so much of her life that he knew nothing about. That's not what happened in this book. To be fair, the ghost, he never figures anything out. This is told through a bunch of different perspectives, jumping back to our character's childhood in Australia and also her time in London with this man. And so like there's like a section of 3. How did they do it? After, which is like when he's dead, and then there's before, and then there's just a random person, and then the then ones move between our main character and her family. I think the author was trying to find a creative way to show us this woman's childhood trauma and what happened to her. It fell really flat for me. And then also there is one perspective in this that is just a random man who kind of lives on they live on this land that used to basically have a reformatory, or the Australian version of a reformatory, and this man's parents, and he's like old now, used to own it. And they give us one random perspective from this man for him to just 20 pages later like cease to exist in this story, and there is no payoff other than obviously talking about the violent things that happened on this land to Australian Indigenous people. Also, the book goes on to critique like art show people who before an art show say, and let's have a moment of silence for the Indigenous people, without like fully doing anything. And so to me, it kind of felt like the author did the same thing, because you just gave us this one perspective and then we really never went back to it and delved into it deeper. Okay, this is Editing Liv popping in hopefully super quick because this is a long wrap up. But I do just want to say my critique of how Australian like First Nations peoples are represented in this was not the author's intent at all. She has a author's note in the back. She is Australian too, I believe, about how in the mid 1800s until the 1970s, under the order of various governments, children of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, I don't know if I said that right, were forcibly taken from their families and put into schools, stripped of their names, cultures, and identities, which is what is talked about in that one perspective. And then she also put, this novel began with the idea of a white Australian woman who finds herself in London, haunted by her past and her dead lover. Very quickly, I realized this story would take me back to her childhood in rural Australia in the mid-90s. To write honestly about this experience would involve deciding how to write about the immense trauma First Nations peoples experienced and continue to experience in consequence of British invasion of Australia. So the author had very pure intent there. For me, it just felt removed from the story and the narrative. I tried to type this all in and I was like, it's too much to type for me to make it make sense, which is why I'm popping in. I just think the way that she chose to like add this one chapter, I just think you could have added that representation in without this one chapter of a character who kind of just like disappears into nothing. Even just like, we're already playing with ghosts and there are definitely ghosts on this land. You could have done that. We follow our main character and her sister multiple times as children. Like, it could have been them learning about it in school or something else that more fit into just like the narrative that was happening in this book. But I do think that Evie Wilde went into it with every intent, and that chapter, which was, I learned about what happened to Indigenous people in Australia. So like, it was beneficial in that way. I don't want to just say what I said and then also pop in with like the performative art piece of how it felt like it was that. It just felt the wrong way narratively to include that in this book. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled programming. I think if it didn't hop around so much, I think if the author chose to tell the story in a different narrative, this could have been really good. I love grief stories. It didn't land for me. Quite literally, the only thing that made me feel something in this book was the last page, or like the last chapter. Also, after I had COVID, I got a sinus infection that I'm still living with, so if I'm sniffly or you can hear me mouth breathing, I apologize. Moving on to our 2.5 stars. These are both physical books that I read. The first one I read in the same vlog I read, Sleep Titan, and that is The Bell Chime by Mona Kabani. This was a very interesting concept. This is about a woman who comes home to her apartment unit and finds a missing poster with her face on it, but it's like this deranged photo of her that she's never taken and she's never seen before, and she keeps hearing this weird bell chime, and she's trying to figure out how this mystery poster came to be. There are kind of 3 sections in this book. I really love the first one, and then the second 2 felt disjointed from the story for me. And then when you finish the book upon completion, there's like a afterword from the author saying that the original first part you read is the original story that the author wrote, and then for years she was thinking about it, so she added on to it. And I just think they didn't fully mesh together and fit together. I do see a lot of people liking this though. If the concept intrigues you, I would definitely pick it up. My other 2.5 star, also just such a heartbreak because I wanted to love it, was Devils Kill Devils by Johnny Compton. I read this for a vampire vlog, which is not out yet, but I am currently editing it. I'm gonna take a pause to edit this, but it should be out right after this video. I was really excited for this because I have read The Spite House by Johnny Compton, and I gave that a 3.5. That was his debut, and I was just really excited to see what else he was gonna do because I loved the writing in that. This, I will say, for me, a biggest part of why it fell flat was characters. So if you are someone who, in your ratings and what you like in books, are not very character driven, like that's one of the lower priorities you care about in a book over plot and things like that, you may like this. And I will say, I think everyone should ignore whatever the average rating of this book is, because I think it just has a case of mistaken identity. Because these 2 paragraphs about what this book is about is not at all what this book is about. Like, after the first 20 pages, this is gone. Sarita has been watched over by a guardian angel her entire life. She calls him Angelo and keeps him secret, but some secrets won't stay hidden. When Angelo murders someone she loves, Sarita begins to see what horrors have really been lurking in the shadows surrounding her, and she'll have to embrace the evil within if she hopes to make it out alive. There is like one thing you could say about this book and what it's about that like people would be like, I love that kind of book and I want it, but I can't even tell you that because it's not in the synopsis. And that synopsis is barely what this book is about. The synopsis is doing a disservice to this book and what you can fully look forward to. I did go into this because it is a vampire book and it's like a vampire mythology, and demon mythology mixed together, which I knew before this book was even out, so I do think I can tell you that despite the fact that it's not in the synopsis. For me, this is told in multiple perspectives, and they all read the same to me. And on top of that, you're following Sarita on this story, and like it says in the beginning, someone she loves is murdered. She goes through this quite like horrific thing, and the entire time she is telling this story with such an emotional detachment that like I just could not connect. And then every other character you read from, it felt the same tonally, and it just did not work for me. Okay, we're popping into my 6 3-stars, and all but one of them were short stories. So let's just bang out the short stories really quick. Ankle Snatcher by Grady Hendrix. I read this on my Kindle at 11:30 at night in the dark in my bed, and I did not get scared. And then I did in fact get up and go to the bathroom with the lights off and was not afraid that there was anything under my bed. Night and Day in Misery by Catriona Ward. I actually really did enjoy that one, but I kind of had a feeling of where it was going the entire time. The Tiger Eats in the Mountains by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I loved the writing in this. It just felt very mundane. There was no horror and there was no hook in the story. It was just like a little slice of life, which is not really what I want in a short story. I want some crazy hook. Letter Slop by Owen King. You could really anticipate where the whole thing was going. And also Best of Luck by Jason Motz, I think. That one, unfortunately, I don't remember what media I consumed, but I feel like I have seen a TV show with nearly this exact concept, so I just knew what was happening the entire time. Jason Mott, no plural on the last name. The only 3-star full novel I read was Blob by Maggie Sue. And I was disappointed in this basically for the same reason that everyone was disappointed in this. We got this pitch of this woman finds a sentient blob outside of a dive bar and decides to try to turn it into the perfect boyfriend. And it just seemed like it was gonna be this crazy, weird story. And there wasn't all that much Blob. I think I put in my Goodreads review, 10 out of 10 would recommend more Blob. It actually just felt like much more of a mundane style of story. I think the first half of the story felt really flat for me. I keep saying fell flat in these, but it was just boring to me because the story was not pitched about what it was. But once I kind of put it down and was like reevaluating my expectations of this book, because obviously they were not what I was it's not what I was expecting it to be. I did enjoy the second half much more than the first half. And I think it was just like I understood it was going to be much more mundane, and I understood that this was so much more a story about this woman who is deeply, deeply depressed and is trying to kind of like claw her way out of that depression, but hasn't fully accepted that the only person who can help her get out of this depression, like, is herself. Like, it has to come from within, babe. And I really did like that theme of this. I mean, there's a lot of low ratings on this, but I thought this was a really strong debut novel, and I will continue to pick up whatever Maggie Sue puts out. I'll just adjust my expectations if I'm given a crazy weird pitch. Okay, my next 3 for 3.5s. One was Bloody Summer by Carmen Maria Machado from the Trespass collection. I really, really enjoyed. It was told kind of like through documents, like this woman was putting together like a historian document about the Bloody Summer, and I found that very interesting. I just think, like, again, me with short stories, I want a little more oomph. Like, I just wanted that, but it was really fun, and I would definitely recommend. And then the other one, the other short story, Indigo Room by Stephen Graham Jones. 3.5 star is not a bad rating. It is the lowest at that point that I had ever given Stephen Graham Jones. And honestly, if this was longer and we got a little more into the actual entity of what was going on in this book, I could have loved it. I could have eaten it up. That this was just like, if you had novella length maybe, it could have been so much higher for me. The novel I read was The Color of Blood by Mona Kabani, which I read in the same vlog as The Bell Chime, and I didn't even realize until I was doing the intro of the vlog that they were the same author. I was like, they just both fit this weird theme for this vlog that I want to do. And when I pulled it up on my Kindle, I was like, who is this by? Sorry, I keep adjusting. I brought out a cushion because I was like, I'm gonna be sitting for a while, and now I think it's making me fidget more. The Color of Blood I liked significantly more than The Bell Chime. This is following a painter, can see people's auras, the color that they are, and when he finds someone who's the perfect color for the art that he's working on, he needs their blood to make that color and put it on his painting. I thought it was so fun. It was gross. And then let me just pull up the synopsis really quick to see if there are things that I'm thinking about saying that I shouldn't. Okay, it says that he then meets an unprecedented person who is more than willing to bleed for him. And that aspect of the story was so freaking fun. It was so interesting and I really liked it. Would recommend. I will say this man is like cutting people open and draining them of their blood. So if that's a little too much for you, don't read this. Okay, we have to go faster, babes. Okay, we're on to my 8 4-stars. Very quickly, the short stories I read. In Bloom by Paul Tremblay. This was fun and was told by a woman who lives in Providence and is going to the Cape, and that was just fun for me. I live in Providence, if you didn't know, at least for a month and a half more. And then The Blanks by Grady Hendrix I liked significantly more than I liked Ankle Snatcher. That was so fun. I loved that one. And then A Righteous Man by Tony Onyebuchi, I believe is the author's name. That one was really good too, following a pastor missionary man in Africa trying to be the white savior of a village. And then Big Bad by Chandler Baker was my last story of the month, and I think was also Jan's 30th story of the month, and we finished it around the same time. I will say I think she's an hour behind me, so she was not cutting it as close on the challenge as I was. This was a really fun werewolf story, and I really, really enjoyed it. We've just gotten the dim screen for the overheating. Let's see how many of these 4-star books I can get through before we shut off. The first one I also read, Fever and Induced, was Plain Nice by Rachel Harrison. Rachel Harrison has been a hit or miss author for me. This is my 3rd book by her. I have read Such Sharp Teeth, which I gave 5 stars, and I have read So Thirsty, which I gave 2 stars. So I was kind of going into this not knowing how I was gonna feel. In this, we are following our main character, Cleo, after her mother dies. Cleo is this makeup, lifestyle, beauty vlogger, influencer, there we go. And when she and her 3 sisters were kids and her parents divorced, her mom moved them into a house that was possessed by a demon, or so their mother says. But the courts and their dad disagreed and got them all out of her custody pretty swiftly. This book opens with Cleo's mom dying. Cleo is the youngest of the sisters and really does not remember most of their time in this home. She is the only one who wants to go to the funeral, so she is the one who is gifted the keys to this house that none of them realized she kept. And all of them were like, she was just kind of crazy and drunk a lot. So it definitely wasn't possessed. It definitely wasn't haunted. So Cleo, in her little influencer brain, was like, oh my god, this girl I went to high school with did like a house remodel makeover series and she gained like 60,000 followers. I'm gonna remodel this house. I will say this is a very slow moving book. It takes you a while to find out if anything creepy is really gonna happen. And like always with Rachel Harrison's novels, the main character was a little annoying. That being said, the second half of this book really ramped it up for me, and finally these sisters actually really started talking to each other, and I really loved the twist of the ending, so I gave this 4 stars. We're in the 4-star section. I don't know why I gave this 4 stars. Next, so good, was Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang. I read Natural Beauty as one of my first books in the beginning of the year and absolutely loved it, so I could not wait to get to this book. In this book, we're following Anka and Mathilde as Anka joins this prestigious art school and kind of becomes enraptured with Mathilde, who is this absolutely incredible artist. Like, this school begged her to come because she was already doing such great work. And you're following this story of obsession and jealousy, but you're following it in this world where there is a little bit of ambiguity, okay? There's like this sci-fi-esque thing that separates the slums and poorer neighborhoods from the richer ones. Like, it's basically a clear wall, but you can't see through. And it's like everyone's lives are just so much better when the poor people can't see how good the rich people are doing, and the rich people don't have to look at how sad the poor people are. Crazy. But we don't really talk about that a lot, but that is the world where Anka is from. Like, she is not a big part of this art world. So when Mathilde like wants to be her friend in school, she's like, oh my god, this is crazy. And in this book, something called scaffold is created, which basically lets you Enter scaffold. Purported to enhance empathy, this cutting-edge technology could allow Enka to inhabit Mathilde's mind and access her memories, artistic inspirations, and deep-seated trauma. Undergoing this procedure would link Enka and Mathilde forever, but at what cost? This was so interesting. I think it could have been a 5 if we maybe talked more about Mathilde is always so kind to Enka, is still reaching out, and Enka kind of like gets these crazy like bouts of jealousy. And when they leave school and Mathilde is really successful, Enka doesn't talk to her for like years because she doesn't want to, and she's not even like recognizing her own jealousy. I think if you made it a little gay, maybe there were some queer undertones going on, but I think if Mathilde was like so in love with Enka or something, it would explain more of why she was just putting up with like a friend who is honestly a bad friend. But overall, I really like this. I loved the talk of jealousy and obsession, but also when they're in school and it's only this first part of the book, something comes out which is basically generative AI, but the people who create it, it's like if some person says, can you put this concept and this concept and this concept together and make me something? Once AI makes it, that person has legal claims to that. So if someone is making actual real art that is this concept, they are legally liable to be sued by this person who just used generative AI. And I loved that part of this, so I would definitely recommend this. Next, we have A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This was really good. Again, for the vampire vlog. I think if I reread this in like a year or so with different expectations, I could love her a lot more. In this book, you are following Dracula's bride, basically as she writes Dracula a letter of why she had to kill him, why it was time for their time together to end. And it really is just the dismantling of a toxic man, of a man who finds a woman at a really low point in her life and kind of love bombs her and then manipulates her for the rest of their relationship together. And this is gonna shut off in 17 seconds, so I'll talk to you more about it in like 20 minutes. Okay, it's been like 25 minutes, so hopefully we can get through the rest of this. We were talking about A Dowry of Blood. What was I fully saying? I don't know. I think we were talking about how it's like dismantling in the beginning, this is like page 10, so don't worry, not spoilers. I will render you as you really were, neither cast you in pristine stained glass nor unholy fire. I will make you into nothing more than a man, tender and brutal in equal measure, and perhaps in doing so I will justify myself to you, to my own haunted conscience. So this follows Dracula in the fact that it is epistolary format. Technically, the only form of letter, though, is just each chapter is her adding an additional part of this letter to Dracula, who at the start of this book is dead because she has killed him. It is also queer. Dracula and Constanza, as they pull more people into their marriage, you could say, is also, I think, what ends up saving her in the end, because had she not really learned that other people could love her and the love of another person, she probably would have just stayed with this toxic man her entire life. It was really good. I do recommend. I just think, I don't know if I wasn't expecting the letter format or if it's because I was doing a vampire vlog, but I wanted just more of the vampire parts. The way she chooses to kill people for their blood is very interesting. Like, it's all about vengeance. And I was like, wow, I want scenes of her, why she's choosing a man and blah, 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 blah. But this just is her story in relation to Dracula and their life together. So it just wasn't that. So I think if I go into it again one day, it could be a higher rating. Okay, what is next? We gotta get back in the groove, back in the flow. I've been gone for a minute. Okay, the last 4-star novel I have to talk about is House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. Also, vampire crazy. I really enjoyed this. We are following, what is our main character's name? I don't know. Marion, as she becomes a blood maid. She is from the South. She's from a very poor area, and in the northern part of this country are where all of the rich people live, and they literally like use blood to fix ailments, keep them alive, and to just have fun. And being a blood maid, some people see it as this disgusting thing, but also is an incredible way to make money. And once you're done, you get paid a pension every year. And Marion wants nothing more than to know what a lavish life is like. Marion is quickly delivered to the House of Hunger, where the Countess Lizavette is in charge, and they kind of have this mutual obsession. I've seen people say like it was very instant, and I don't get it. I do do. Marion is instantly introduced to this woman who has changed her life for the better and is giving her all of these things she's never had before, and I can understand how that would very easily lead into obsession and wanting to please this person. And I won't tell you Elizabeth's half of the obsession because that would be a spoiler. And as Marion comes to the House of Hunger and she meets all of the other bloodmaids there and they start getting to know each other, she kind of starts to find very sinister things going on in this house, and things start to kind of unravel from there. I do believe this is based off of a true story. I would say do not look that up until after you have finished. I think the Countess in this is based off of a true story. Don't look that up if you want to read this, because that would be, I think, just a total spoiler overall of where the story is going and the sinister turns it's going to take. I did really enjoy this. I enjoyed Alexis Henderson's writing. I was trying to put S's where they shouldn't be. It was really good. I think I could have liked it more if maybe we had 50 more pages. The ending felt really, really rushed for me, and I just wanted a little bit more. It was like the sinister happened, it turned, and it was like, let's power through these last like 30 pages and boom, done. So I would have just liked a little more slow burned in that aspect. Next were my 4.5 stars. There were 2 of the short stories. So one is Backbone of the World by Mr. Stephen Graham Jones. This is about prairie dogs and a woman who is at war with the prairie dogs on her property, and that is all. I'll leave it at that. Mr. Stephen Graham Jones with his freaking acknowledgements, so much of them are just about how he's sorry to the prairie dogs that he sees by the road. They're looking for something because it's probably for their loved ones who were hit by a car. You saw that and that was your inspiration for this story. I just love how your mind works. Anywho, the other was It Waits in the Woods by Josh Malerman, which was so fun and creepy, and I really enjoyed it. And also, pretty sure the extra half star was for the Nario book autorator, because girl was doing the thing, okay? The different voices, the crazy noises she was making didn't feel cringy or weird like it can sometimes, like just totally added to the story, and I loved it. The other 4.5 star book I read, I'm sorry if you can hear a nail gun outside. A house down the street is getting their siding redone before winter, but that was The Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I loved this. I don't read a lot of romance, but having it in this horror-esque setting was so fun, and having it in this little gothic world, I had an incredible time. In this book, we're following Nestor and Nena. They've known each other since childhood. They were so in love with each other as children and wanted to get married, and one night they are out looking for hidden silver to basically, Nestor's like, because Nena wants to do this and I love her, and Nena's like, because the white men are trying to come to our farm, and I think if we have, or to our ranchero, and I think if we have more money, it can help my parents like keep our ranchero, but also it can help me from being sold off into marriage to a wealthier ranchero for protection of our family's home, because I want to marry Nestor. And when they're out that night, they get attacked, and Nena is unwell. Nestor carries her all the way home. She is believed to be dead, and Nestor runs away. One, because her father, who owns this ranchero, has
"Don't shake your fist at me!"
just a lot of fury that everyone is afraid of, and also because he killed his true love. He felt like he didn't save her and he didn't do enough. Spoiler alert, she didn't die. So we fast forward, I think they're 13 when that happens, so we fast forward maybe like 7 years, they're 20-ish. And the white men are invading Mexico, and it is 1846, and it is time to go to war. Nestor has been called back to the ranchero to help protect it because his family still lives there, and Nena has convinced her father to let her go along to war as a healer because she is trying to prove her worth is on their ranchero and not being married off to someone else. Obviously, they see each other on the road to war, and Nena is pissed because her parents don't want her to marry just this son of a vaquero who isn't worth anything. So they never really tell her much about what happens that night. So to Nena, she's like, I got attacked in the woods and you disappeared. No one tells her that her mom was screaming, my daughter's dead, my daughter's dead. No one is like, he thought you were dead. She just thought he ran away. And Nestor is like the most thankful person in the world because his love of his life is alive and breathing, but also he's missed so many years now. And they get separated from their group as they have to try to travel back to the ranchero, and it is just this slow burn of them both pretending they still don't love each other, you know? It's very much not about the vampires, which I did remember seeing. So I was fully going into that. That being said, the parts with the vampires are so good. In the first like battle scene, the body horror that comes with them, which I have to go back and edit my vlog because I think saying what I thought it was is a spoiler. I'm also just realizing I didn't clear my memory card before we started this, so I'm gonna have to go delete stuff. We're gonna run out of space. But this was really, really good. I think Nestor, I said this in my vlog, I was like, I think Nestor invented longing. He was the first person to ever be afflicted with just pure unadulterated longing. You get to read from both of their perspectives. It's so fun. It's juicy. I had a great time reading this. On to the 5 stars. There is only one short story that made it into this. This is the one from the sci-fi collection that I can't remember the name of, but I have since probably hopefully put on the screen. And that is Emergency Skin by N.K. Jemisin. I loved this. It was so just like weird and quirky. I don't read a lot of sci-fi, so maybe in the way with a lot of the horror ones on the Amazon originals, I was like, I've seen stories like this, so I knew where it was going. Maybe if you've read a lot of sci-fi, that is how you would feel reading Emergency Skin. I loved it. And also I was listening to it on audio, and the narration was like a little confusing at first about what fully was happening. I don't fully know that having the physical thing in front of me would have helped, but I feel like that added to the strange quirkiness. And now on top of my freaking SD card running out of space, how did I get water on this? To our ranch. My battery's gonna die. Hold please. I'm a mess today, I guess. Okay, I think we're maybe at a different angle now, so I apologize, but that is the last time I have to turn the camera off, I swear. Emergency Skin is in a collection called the Forward Collection, which is like Stories of Tomorrow, which I think Blake Crouch, who I have not read, was like the editor of. He's the one, or he had the idea for it, reached out to people to do it. But it first popped up because Paul Tremblay has a story in this, which I want to read as well. Maybe I'll work my way through those if I don't cancel my Kindle Unlimited. Anywhomst, let's talk about the 4 5-star novels I had. Let's go in order that I read them. So the first one of those would be We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver. I loved this. I also read this in my COVID vlog, and I am like unhinged when I'm reading it because there are so many hidden things in this, and I have such a fever, and I'm like on my couch going crazy playing detective in the vlog. But it was so fun. It made it such a fun, enjoyable experience. In this book, we are following, if you haven't heard of this book, my dudes, where have you been? You all know what this is. We all know what this is. We follow a couple who are living in this new home as they are trying to flip it, and one day while one of the couple is out and about, the one who is much more of a pushover, more of the anxious one, is home, and this family shows up, and the father's like, I used to live here and I just want to show my family around. Is that okay with you? Literally at first was like, no. Pretended her girlfriend called her girlfriend, and her girlfriend said no, and then they're walking away and she like caves. She's like, just 15 minutes, fine, come in. As they're walking around the house, one of the children goes missing and the family just won't leave. This was so good. It had so many turns I wasn't expecting. Like I said, you get to play detective. This is the opening map. After every chapter, there is some multimedia, whether it is a news article or something else. But at the bottom of every news article, there is, I don't know if that's showing up, Morse code, and you have to figure out what the Morse code was. And then also there was one point where this man literally had me translating Swedish body horror to understand what was going on, and I was having such a fun time. I thought it was maybe gonna be a 4 or a 4.5, and the last chapter, like that last freaking edition, dude, it made it perfect. It was so good. I wrapped it up so nicely, and I was like, yes. It was also, I had kind of the theory in the middle of the book. I literally, Fever Me left videos just for editing me to listen to my theories that I obviously couldn't put in the video. It was just that I highly recommend reading this when you have a fever. Okay, the next one I read was also the last one I read in my COVID vlog, actually, and not in the vampire vlog, and that was The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This and one of the next books, depending on the day, they're tied so far for a favorite book of the year. This is a vampire story, like I said, but it's also a Native American revenge story. It is following 2 timelines. Our first one in 2012, where a day worker at a demolition site pulls an old journal out of the wall. And this journal belongs to Arthur Bocarn, who was a Lutheran pastor in 1912 in Miles City, Montana. So in 2012, we're following his great granddaughter as she is sifting through this journal and is trying to write something to get published so she can get tenured at the university that she works in. And it seems like perfect timing that this is found. And then you flash back into 1912 and you are reading Arthur Bocarn's just journal, where he is recounting weeks worth of confessionals with this Native American Goodstab, who is, and let's get the exact quote, told in transcribed interviews with Goodstab, who shares the narrative of his peculiar and unnaturally long life over a series of confessional visits. This is so good. There's so many smart, creative things done in the literary sense of this book. The fact that the only two people you ever view Goodstab through are Arthur Bucharn and his great-great-great-granddaughter Etsy. So just like so much media that is out and produced now that's telling Indigenous stories and is telling Native American stories, it's being told through a white person. It's not being told, or they're not being seen through an Indigenous eye, and it's not coming from them, like their story. That is so good. And then two, Arthur Bucharn's journal is split up into two parts. So one is just him kind of talking about the week and blah, 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 and leading up to his meetings with Goodstab each week. So part of his journal is his daily journal as these husks, as they're calling them, are being found around town, bodies that are skinned. And then when he switches into Goodstab's confessional, it changes the way he's narrating, even though it's still his journal. Instead of having any additional narrative in Goodstab's part, it is fully oral storytelling. So if Goodstab says something like, I was shot here, or a sawing motion like this, there is no end of quotation marks, and then he pointed to his shoulder, or and I looked and saw him. There's no additional narrative. So his parts are just truly oral storytelling, which is just so smart, so creative. Thank you, Stephen Graham Jones. And then this book also follows, and it says it in here, what is unveiled is a slow massacre, a nearly forgotten chain of events that goes back to 217 Blackfeet dead in the snow, which is a true massacre called the Marias Massacre that happened on January 23rd, 1870, or January 20th, 1873. One of those two. And it is a true massacre that happened, and it is so disturbing. It wasn't even the camp of Native Americans that these American soldiers went to attack. They were just tired from walking in the snow, and they decided this was good enough. And there were two men there screaming that this isn't the right camp, this isn't the right chief you're looking for, and they didn't care, and they killed all of these Native Americans just in their lodges, in their homes, while they're in sick beds, and massacred all of them. At the end of this book, which I think is maybe the Barnes and Noble edition, has old historical documents from Montana, letters from soldiers who did this, people recounting what happened. It is where he actually finds the name Goodstab for our main character, and also just his little thing here, so good. I knew I wanted to have an Indian who couldn't die coming for the people who shot us in our lodges on January 23rd, 1870, but I didn't have a name for him. You'll see that name in here right where I found it. More important, I only knew the basic facts of that day. Not that Heavy Runner was in the river, not how many horses the soldiers stole, not the sound of an axe splitting a skull. I dare you to read this and not want to let a whole horde of sharp-toothed monsters loose on America. It wouldn't be enough, but it would be a start. Until then, I'll make do with Goodstab. He's the one who will be sitting in the pew after the service is over. That just almost made me cry, rereading that. I did cry quite a bit while reading this. Oh my god. This was done so well. It was done so creatively. I am already re-listening to it on audio just very slowly when I drive to and from work. And so much of the foreshadowing that I missed in the beginning 2012 portion that I didn't even realize, I'm just like, oh my god, how smart are you, good sir? So freaking good. I implore you, please read this. Okay, 2 more books. The next 5-star I gave was a book I cannot believe it has taken me this long to read. Weirdly, is in the vlog with the Mona Kabani books and Sleep Tight. You'll understand when you see that vlog, is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This little guy is following 39 women who are all imprisoned underground, and the youngest 40th member, who is the only young one out of all of them. She's a little girl when they wake up in this room with no recollection of how they got there, and she is probably a teenager when she finds a way for them to escape and helps them survive in the very strange, weird world that is awaiting above them. And I cannot tell you more than this, because this is one of the most ambiguous books I've ever read. If you are someone who needs answers, you're not gonna get it, babe. But this was so good. It was such a fun, almost character study. It was so fun to see this sci-fi world of what would happen if there was no men, and what decision would these women make. And it also makes you reckon with at points where they stop trying or they give up. If there were men there, would that be different? It just opens up so many conversations. It was so freaking good. I feel like I could reread this a dozen times and get something new out of it every single time. I highly recommend this. I keep seeing it on people's like influence, de-influence my fall TBRs. Read it. If you are like me and you somehow have not read this yet, pick it up, because it was so freaking good. And my final 5-star, which is also in a tie with Buffalo Hunter Hunter, I sobbed while reading this. I don't think that vlog's gonna come out until November, but there's a lot of footage of me crying, and that is Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. No words, but actually so many words. I wrote like a 7-paragraph Goodreads review about this book. In this book, we are following the Salt family, as they are the only inhabitants of Shearwater Island, this island that's pretty close to Antarctica, and it houses the world's last seed bank, which is like a true thing that we have that I didn't know about. But because of the tundra-like climate and the permafrost, they're able to keep all of these different seeds of different plants alive for in case insane climate disaster one day comes and we have to rebuild everything. But this is a world where climate change is a little further along than the one that we are currently living in. It is not one, I believe, that is too far off from our world. It is not one that is so unrealistic if nothing changes. And you know, we keep just electing people who don't believe in climate change. But hey, you know. But we're following the Salts as they are getting ready to leave this island forever because it is no longer safe to stay. Sea levels are rising. They have to evacuate, and they have to evacuate with the seeds. And one day, a woman washes up on shore. Surely,
and don't call me Shirley.
she should be dead. She is nearly drowned, and they nurse her back to health. And there's a mysterious reason that this woman is here that they don't know. It makes them hard to trust her, but also she's there for a specific reason and she doesn't trust them, and you're following all of their perspectives. This, for me, the biggest part of this was it felt like a character study in grief and different types of grief, and that was so freaking stunning to me. You're following the Salt family. Their two oldest kids are like 18, 17, and their youngest son is 8 years old. Their mother dies when the youngest son is born, and it's the different way that the grief of losing their mother and wife has affected all of them, and basically the way in their grief they can't fully see and recognize each other's grief. They don't understand how to help each other, and honestly at this point are basically incapable of really and truly communicating with each other, and it is so heartbreaking. You're reading Dominic's perspective. He's the dad, and in some of the ways he's thinking in his mind, he has so much love for his children, like an unburdening, undying love for these kids, and he is so incapable of putting it into words, and it's so freaking heartbreaking to read. And you're also following Rowan. I'll leave a lot of what is some of her grief in the pages for you to find. And then you're following the young 8-year-old boy who doesn't understand a lot of his family's grief because he never knew his mother. He is so intrigued by Rowan and is so attached to her because he never knew his mother. And his little parts are the little slivers of hope in this book where he's just so excitedly talking about these seeds, and it feels like when you're a young kid and you learn about climate change and you're like, oh my god, if I just do this and this and this and these easy things, everything will be fine and we can change the world. And it's before you're unburdened with the literal politics of it all and how it's like so much harder than a little 8-year-old brain can comprehend. And I loved having that fresh perspective in there. And then also there's so much grief just about not just a world ravaged by climate change, but climate disasters and seeing the place that you love be fully turned into something else, fully turned into something uninhabitable, and knowing you're never gonna see it again. It's never gonna be the way that you loved it and like it fed life into you ever again. And it was so good. There is so much about the beautiful parts of grief. There's so much about the monstrous parts of grief. There's so much more other than grief in this book. But grief, I don't know, is just something I've always gravitated to in novels. If you tell me it's grief something, like The Echoes, or I'm gonna pick it up because I need to know. But this one just hit the mark in every single aspect. There's also just so many good conversations about the ethicality of, is that a word? I don't think so. Whatever. Of bringing children into this world as it's headed for disaster, as we're overpopulated. There's so much of that. I loved having that conversation. But most of all, I love books that really at the forefront put characters first. And this book did that. It was so much about the characters, but also the atmosphere of this book was so beautiful. And the writing was so lush that, quite frankly, the entire time I felt like I was right there standing on Shearwater Island. I could feel the fucking wind. I could smell the salt air. Like, it was just, she wrote it so freaking well. I can't believe I've never read any other Charlotte McConaughey. Oh my god, it was, now that I'm thinking about it more, just yes, every point that she brought up, she hit the mark, and I just ate it up. And I also implore you to read this. I think you can tell in some of the things that are my 5 stars and some of the things that are competing for favorite book of the year. There is so much social commentary, political commentary, historical commentary that's happening that if you can make me think and really put me in this story in that way, that is just what I love in my novels. But anyway, this clip is now 20 minutes and this is gonna be a very, very long wrap up. So I'm gonna bid you all adieu very shortly. But if you have read any of these books, please let me know what you thought, especially some of the ones that I didn't like. If you loved them, please give me the reasons why. If you hated some of the ones I loved, also please give me the reasons why. Let me know what your favorite book of September was so I can read it and see if it's one of my favorite books. And I always forget to act like a real YouTuber. I've never said this in a video before, but if you like this video, if you like my chaotic energy, I guess, please subscribe, like the video, and I will see you all soon with a vampire blog. Okay, see you later, bye!